happening in the studio. Let's kick off the show. I'll do the intro. Let's do this thing. Welcome to Wealth, Wine and Wisdom, folks. Proudly brought to you this week and the coming weeks. We have a sponsor, Sadler's Creek Wine. Shout out to you, Wendy, Loren. Fabulous. Thank you for your wines. We're testing them out today. Really appreciate that. Awesome to have you supporting us and likewise supporting you. The wines are excellent. Andy and I'll have a bit of a chat about those in a moment. So brought to you by me, Jason Witten, the world of property. My compadre on the other side of the zoom lens or the end of the camera is Andy Fenton, the world of banking and financial planning. And where the two worlds collide, that's what we thought we'd sort of say, where real estate and financial planning and shares collide, but it's really not. It's about melding them together. But welcome, Andy. How are you, brother?
Mate, I'm well. It's been a hectic week and a good week, but mate, we're at Friday, and geez, I'll tell you what, there couldn't be any more happening from week to week these days. I reckon it's the world has gone mad, and it's gone mad in good ways, interesting ways, strange ways. Yes. Lots to talk about, though.
Absolutely, mate. So a bit of a shout out to Alison there. She's always quick on the jump. Alison, how are you? Good to see you here today. You're always on the lives. Great to have you on today, that's for sure. And Andy, while we're kicking it off, got our first sponsor, and really, really awesome to have a sponsor for the show. Sadler's Creek Wine. Which one are you drinking at your end, mate?
Mate, so I've got the Bluegrass Cab Sav. It's the 2018.
Oh, I did see that one in the box. Yeah. I almost chose that one today myself, but yeah.
Mate, it's I just opened it. I'll give you some more tips towards the end. But from the Hunter Valley. So for those of you who are in and around that sort of region, the Hunter Valley is a cracking place. And this is the first one I've sampled. And I tell you what, I haven't even taken a sip yet. It's big. It's big, right? Lots of plum in there.
Andy, you're a sophisticated palate man. How's it go? This is live.
Mate, that's beautiful. Lovely legs. It's actually really nice and soft as well for a Cab Sav. It's big.
There you go.
And the Hunter Valley is actually quite renowned for the very, very different way that it grows some of it. Well, not the way that it grows it, but the expressions of the fruit. In that, I've had a few Shirazes from the Hunter Valley, which I swore were Cab Savs, and various different things like that. So. Well,
we've got a bit of jealousy from a few of the viewers here, Andy. So they're sort of saying, "Are we getting some wine too?" Well, gang, I reckon if we all get together, we might even get some team sponsorship going. You never know with this stuff, which is kind of cool. But great to see a bunch of people online already, and thanks for joining us as Andy and I chat about real estate and the world of the stock market and everything in between. Andy's trying out the nice red wine there from Sadler's Creek, and I'm giving the little Semillon a go, the little cheeky white here today, and again, very nice taste. It's a bit hotter here in Queensland, so I thought I'd sort of go with a white instead of a red. So, mate, my palate is not as advanced as yours, and I don't know the fancy words, but it tastes good. And I'm enjoying the drink.
Depending on the world that you come from, that means I haven't been as drunk as you before. But
that is true. That is true.
Mate, the Hunter is actually famous for its Semillon, and you got to drop the Ehlers off the end of it. It's Sadler's Creek. And mate, they're famous for the Semillon, so I reckon I'll give that a crack when Victoria busts through the 30-degree mark, whenever that may be next.
Yes.
But mate, I'm very much enjoying this. It's a nice cool temperature down here at the moment, and I'll tell you what, if I had a nice slow roasted lamb right about now, I probably wouldn't be on the show, to be honest.
Well, let's get into the show, Andy. What's been going on this week? It's been a crazy week in the world of the stock market and all things politics that affect your world pretty significantly. And in my world, it's been interesting. I think I sort of said to you last week or the week before, I feel like I'm in the middle of the eye of the storm. Probably the storm on one side where we entered this storm, the real estate storm, was APRA and then COVID. And I feel like we're in the middle of the eye of the storm right now. And some things that I'm going to share a bit later. So folks, stay tuned. Stay tuned. What I'm going to share a bit later in the real estate game, I think is super exciting anyway. So, mate, and what about you? I think the big headlines this week is Trump's out. That's good, as far as I'm concerned anyway. But how did the markets react? And what are you seeing? What do you got to share with us today?
Well, I haven't brought too many market analytics, but the market is considerably up, right? Especially here in Australia, it's kind of boomed, if you will. I mean, it's a little bit off today. The All Ords about 6,400, and so that jumped up from it got underneath the 6,000 mark not too long ago. But that's what we said. We said we were going to see a huge amount of volatility. Yeah. I'm almost done for the moment with the whole Trump saga thing. We're going to see a huge amount of volatility in markets. And I've got some really interesting stuff to go through later on, some more technical slides that, you know how I always try and relate the time that we're in to some point in time over history. Yes. And had the privilege to chat with a portfolio manager throughout the week of a fund that we use. And they found one of those reference points in time, which I'm going to share with you, that which goes back to the Asian currency crisis and interest rates. So this will stream over property and equities. But I thought rather than just punch on with the bullshit rhetoric that we're hearing just constantly in the media at the moment, because it's saturated now. There's really very little that you and I can add that isn't probably being flaunted now. As you know, we said it 2 weeks ago, and it's coming out in the news now. So all you journos out there, congratulations for picking it up. You must have watched the
You're
episode.
A bit behind the times. Listen, folks, here's the thing, Andy and I. You go back and review all of our One of Wisdom podcasts or our recordings, you will see us talking about things that have come true, and they're still. Well, I've still got plenty up my sleeve for real estate, and literally word for word, gang. And this is an interesting thing, Andy, because you're saying, hey, good on your journos. It's interesting, and you and I have chatted about this before. The default position for a lot of people is to rely on journalism to report some interesting information and accurate information about decisions we should make. And unfortunately, very sadly, I think for that profession, it couldn't be any further from the truth. It's actually sensationalized rubbish 9 times out of 10. And, if you were to base your decisions based on what journalists put in the fucking newspaper, excuse the French, Mrs. Fenton, if you're listening in, God, you're insane. You got rocks in your fucking head. And, at the end of the day, some of that information is interesting to understand and know, but, like you and me, what we do is we say, well, that's interesting. I wonder what that means to me, and I wonder where that's coming from, and let's investigate a little bit deeper, right?
Yeah, as opposed to what it seems to be these days is here's my agenda and let's sort to make sure that we're right.
Yeah.
And that kind of reporting, I think, is it's parasitic reporting. It's just trying to hold on to and milk the most out of everything. And let's face it, there's enough buffoonery going on now that you can make a good story out of anything. But let's not bash the politicians. Let's not bash the media too much. They might come back and have a swing at us. But
well, mate, bring it on. We'll take them on. You know what we'll do, Andy? We'll say if you're going to come on Wine of Wisdom, you need to bring your balance sheet. We'll all put our balance sheets on the table, and then we can talk. Because, mate, 9 times out of 10, you ask any fool who wants to comment, and unfortunately, everyone likes to comment on in our world, especially in the world of Facebook or Instagram or whatever. You get lots of people who talk a bunch of rubbish, and they've done nothing in the industries that they're commenting on, and they don't own assets, they've never invested, they've never coached or helped clients, they've never run a business. I mean, crikey, a reporter is an employee who just finished university, who's still got a HECS debt, still lives at home with their mum and fucking dad. They can't even pay their own way. And, you want to listen to that idiot who writes an article that he's told to write an article from, someone else somewhere with an agenda. Whoa. Anyway, I'm fired up about it, as you're going along. But there's a few people online, David.
That's the Jason beat up of the day. So, mate, sharing some what I think is a little bit more highbrow and kind of interesting, and this goes across a lot of the topics that you and I talk about.
Yeah,
and it comes from an incredible source, right? So this guy is a giant in the industry. So Bruce really didn't come from a huge amount. He runs Brookfield Asset Management, which is 540 billion of assets under management. Huge in large metropolises like Canary Wharf, like New York, like these various different companies.
You got your picture and picture going, Andy. Fire your picture and picture up. There you are.
I've come and I've gone, but I'm back again. So this guy's he's a big deal in and around the world, and so he came on to Bloomberg and a few articles since, and this is what I really, really like, where everybody is ducking and weaving and trying to figure out where COVID is taking the new normal. Right. And I'm sick of this expression, the new normal. There is normal. All right. There is normal and there is evolution. And here's the thing, evolution takes time.
Yeah.
And no, I'm not saying that he's right, but because he does have a vested interest in the outcome of this. But his take was broadly this. Gentlemen, our beliefs, our systems, and our social needs as people has grown over the last 1,000 years. It suffered many a plague. It suffered many a war. It suffered people being ostracized. It's had ethnic cleansing. It's had all these various different things that have happened over 2,000 years. And we still congregate. My internet's nice and strong, but the beautiful thing was it gave me a good chance to have a good sip of this wine.
Well, I've kicked us back in live, and well, there's everyone back. Sorry, folks, we just had a technical difficulty. But listen, Andy, you were talking about we've been socialized for thousands of years to congregate in this way in cities, which is important. And here's one I prepared earlier. I didn't even know you were going to talk about this today, but check this out. As we look at the population in and around Australia, check out that 75% of the state's population of Melbourne live in the city, right? Or Victoria live in Melbourne, right? Okay, 75%. 63% of the state's population live in Brisbane. Live in Sydney. 48% of the population live in Brisbane. That's not going to change, significantly in any major significant way anytime soon. And, like you said, the idea that, that's going to change just because we've had 1 year's worth of, what might seem a challenge, but in reality, it's not in the blip of 2,000 years. It's nothing. And, the reality is that behavior is not going to be retrained, ingrained in any way, shape or form in such a short period of time in comparison to other things, into comparison to time and whatever. So the behavior is still going to be there. And that's like, I'm pretty pumped about, the world of investing this year, because like we said at the start, folks, there's a bunch of things coming true. Andy and I have been talking about these for now 6 months. Go back and listen to our, not too much wine, because we were talking some wisdom. This shit's coming true. And it's not necessarily true. It's not like we know the truth. We just know how things work in our games. And you don't have to be Einstein to know that, things are needed. Businesses are needed. Commercial property is needed. Real estate is needed. Finance is needed right now in the world. And it will have a slowdown and it will have a growth, and there's booms and busts and cycles because, Andy, right now, if you have a look at what's going on, I saw this one today or yesterday, which was the the consumer sentiment index, right? And, we've had a major bounce in the index. Everyone's feeling chipper about what's coming up. Lee, it's been a bit average. Here, look at COVID down here, everyone was a bit down in the mouth, but, the reality is you can't keep us down, and us means, the world. People want to be out. People want to be producing. People want to be doing things. People want life to go on. COVID is not, even though people think, oh, COVID was tough, it's not comparison to, world wars and other things and all those sorts of things. It's been tough for a lot of people. Yeah, sure. I'm not trying to minimize that. But in comparison to 2,000 years of human behavior, it's a blip on the screen. So don't let it derail you. And I think my point is where you just brought up this fellow that you're talking about. I don't know him, but he's obviously a giant in your world. He's like saying, well, who cares? I'm a big player and I'm a long-term vision player in this sector. And the long-term vision is solid. Matter of fact, I'm doubling and tripling down right now because I can nick this stuff for a song because of those short-term vision people. And this is the problem. This is my it's my high horse. I get on this one all the time. If you are a short-term good time Charlie, you don't belong in investing. You don't belong. Get out. You hurt yourself and you hurt everyone else around you because you can't handle the process of being committed to something that is good and long-term, because the moment something happens, you run off and you cry to your mum because it didn't go your way. And you know what? Grow up. Nothing good happens in an instant. It happens over a medium to long term when it comes to real estate. Anyway, there's my little soapbox moment. I got fired up about that one, Andy.
But look, and the reality is that we need those people because they're the ones who provide us with opportunities.
Yeah.
Really. But, you don't want to make good off other people's misery. But if you follow the media, if you follow the hype, if you follow looking 3 feet in front of your face, then you're going to trip over. You're going to see some wonderful things. You're going to pick up a few dollars and cents along the way. But eventually you're going to fall into a ditch that you never saw coming. And this is this short-term thinking, and this is where you got to detach yourself from this, the news that tries to sensationalize. And I reckon if you bring that slide back up, I didn't get a good look at it, but I reckon if you look at it, it'll basically be a media slide that'll show you where. Let's have a little bit of a look-see. November 20. Okay, so COVID lockdown finishes. That I reckon almost it'd be good to get a shorter sample of that. I reckon that big dive down there in sentiment is probably when when we were meant to be let out of lockdown, but it went for another week. And so these things, have rapid and instantaneous results on people.
Yeah.
And these are the things that we need to be careful for. So
totally
going for the long game.
Yeah.
And so, mate, look, there's some great stuff, and this conversation, we should maybe just stay on this, but I'm going to go through a couple of other things in the news. But there's actually a chart in here which it goes to a lot of the things that we've been talking about from a stocks perspective, but it overlaps into what we've just talked about in real estate. But just coming back to a couple of other little things in the news that are happening right now. Is this one, which is magnificent. Victorians are allowed back over. South Australians opens to Victoria, and WA relaxes the border. Now, the reality is now that I think that other states have more cases than what we do that are active, even though they're in quarantine at the moment. But Australia is starting to relax. So here's my little warning to everybody. And I've always said, participate in your local council, participate in your local shire, because here's my tip of what's going to happen. And it was my great uncle. It was this guy here. It was Clyde Fenton, and I'm going to probably misquote him a bit. Clyde was the original flying doctor from Catherine.
Is that for real?
Yeah, he was the one that basically was the building blocks of all of the Flying Doctors series. He used to fly a tiger moth out of Catherine, and he was a surgeon, doctor and a surgeon, and used to save people. Got very involved in the native community. He's got a museum up there, and he was a very philanthropic kind of character as well, and a bit of a larrikin, which is why he's a Fenton. There's a picture in
mate,
this book.
I don't think the acorn fell far from the tree, to be honest.
I loved this when I was young, but and I should have nicked the segment of the book. We give it to clients every now and again if we believe that the clients will appreciate the sort of the family history.
Yeah.
But there's a picture in here of where he took his tiger moth, his gypsy tiger moth, and he flew it and he landed it directly outside the Catherine pub. And he's got a pint in one hand, he's got the tiger moth on the other hand, and the pub's just in the background.
I love it. I love it.
And he had no tolerance for authority figures. Like CASA and the aviation industry. And so his saying was, hell hath no fury, like public servant granted limited authority, whose actions will make the heavens weep. So basically what that means is it started at the top. Then it went to state level and they started locking down borders, which I assert is allegedly anti-constitutional, by the way. I don't think it's legal. That's my opinion. But what that's going to do is that'll cascade down into public, into your shire, into your local council. Don't let it happen. Have a voice in these things as it happens, because otherwise this type of toxic public servant authority will become very, very detrimental to your area. So have a say and make sure that the borders stay open in general, because that's what we need as a country to maintain our freedom.
Well, mate, speaking of borders, here's something that's really interesting. One thing that I've been talking about for quite a while, and it's coming. Here we go. State border reopens on crack for Christmas. And they're already discussing international travellers, right? And so you and I have talked about this one. Like the government can't have no international visitors, travellers, people in this country. So it's already coming, right? It's already coming. They're in discussions. Like here's another one of my, call it predictions, call it whatever we're going to call them, Andy, because you and I are nailing this. What are we doing? At the end of the day, the government has to allow, people, expats and others back into the country. And, that's for international students. Emily just sort of said that right now. It's got to happen. We've got to get our communities back into their mojo, and international students are super, super important to the Australian economy, like majorly. And certainly Melbourne is one of those places. Brian is talking about, Singapore and Hong Kong have also done the same here. It's back on, right? And, anybody who sat there a month ago going, oh, they'll never open the borders again, like, you have no idea what you're talking about. Like that is such a really low quality, thought process. You've got to look past your nose with this stuff. The government has to bring it back. Our whole infrastructure has been built on this type of thing since the 50s, Andy. Anyone listening in, the government has grown Australia. I think it's probably even earlier, probably the early 1900s. Well, I mean, let's face it. I mean, if we're going to go there.
We were brought over on a boat.
Fuck. Yeah, exactly. That's anyway, let's not go there, with respect to the local indigenous cultures of the country,
Indeed.
Shit. It's been happening forever, and it's not going to stop. The Australian government has to bring people into the country, and international travel and international immigration will be back before you know it, in the blink of an eye, and it will come back strong. And that's why I'm so pumped about how it's kind of almost like a fairy tale comeback for my world, for the game of real estate. I'm telling you right now. And those who've been listening to us and making sure that they dot their I's and cross their T's and get their ducks in order are going to benefit significantly from that comeback, when we're going to be in the middle of the lowest interest rates Australia has ever seen in history. We're going to be in the middle of the worst construction supply Australia has ever seen in history. And then we're going to have the biggest population boom temporary population boom from overseas immigration and students coming back, probably in history. I don't know. There's going to be some records broken, but anyway, I'm excited about the idea.
Well, I can't hold it back any longer, Jay. So I'm going to bust into something that I had ready for later on.
Go, man. Get in there, Andy.
You know that I always say that history doesn't repeat itself, but it's an extraordinary mimic. So, and it was Churchill who said that those who don't study history are bound to repeat it. So this is so I was chatting with the team from Antipodes, which is a fund manager, earlier this week, and they talked about this slide that I'm about to show you. But when we talk about low interest rates, where do you think that we can look to look at a place, an economy that's had suppressed interest rates for a long period of time?
Japan. Is that my guess?
100%.
Yep.
100%. So this happened back, and let me see if I can bring this up. Yep. So hopefully you can see that nicely. So the first chart shows you, so you've got the PE here. So PE is the price to earnings ratio. So you can see back in 1998 to 99, 2000, which is just after the Asian currency crisis, where you can see bond yields going down to 1% there, right? In that first chart, you can see that the PE, price to earnings ratio of companies actually spiked. So basically what ended up, but you can see that only spiked for a very short period of time. So the price relative to earnings of a company went through the roof, right? And then it normalized really, really quickly. And then you can see this, and we've talked about this previously, and I'm getting a little bit more technical here, but this is the equity risk premium, right? So the amount of additional return that you want from the share market in order to put your money there. All right, I'll say that again. It's the additional expected return that you want, or that the market kind of demands, in order for you to take your money out of cash and invest it. And it makes sense, right? You've got rates at zero.
Yeah.
So you can't leave them there. So and as a result, more money is going to flow into different areas, and they're going to start demanding higher and higher returns for that. They're going to demand that they want it.
So you're saying, say in 1999, the rates were at zero in Japan. This is a Japan example.
Correct. Yep. Actually, in 1998, they hit zero. They sort of tried to bounce back up. They hit zero again in 2002, I think it is. They keep trying to get up, but they've never been able to.
Yeah.
Right? They've never been able to. And so you've got to look at this and kind of go, okay, well, what effect does this have? So on equity markets, this is actually a really good thing for what we call value stocks. So potentially, this is a really, really good sign for the share market. I'm saying potentially because I don't want people to go out and be stupid. But if you look at the second chart is the industrial production in Japan. And even in a low growth environment, the cycle never died. The cycle was shorter and shallower, but there was still a cycle as a result of stimulus under the economy. So there's a couple of things I want to point out from this. The reason why the equity risk premium, the PE, the price to earnings, one of the reasons that we believe that actually stalled was because of the stimulus and because the low dollar. So these companies that should have died, right? They should have died. They are not long-term sustainable companies. Could crawl along. Right. So you had companies that killed the pig, crushed it, and were absolutely just dominating. But then you had a big tail, and you hear, the expression where they say the tail wagged the dog.
Yes.
Wags the dog. So this is one of those examples whereby you had mass amount of companies that were then just holding on. Holding on, and they could hold on because of the low interest rates.
Yeah.
And this damages investment markets in some ways long term. But what's the other thing that then helps zombie companies stay afloat?
Low interest rates.
Low interest rates, but also on top of that,
government incentives. Yeah.
It's poorly placed government incentive schemes.
Yes.
And so this is a real flag for the future, because they're going to start to realize this. And one of the headlines I had was that Job Maker is now about, and Job Maker, probably good, right? Job Keeper is a short-term thing, which is a bad stimulus because it creates zombie companies all around Australia, which they're just flowing money into companies that are already dead, rather than saving that money and putting it into useful areas.
And also too, like it's interesting you bring this up, Andy, because there's Harry. How are you, Harry? Good to see you here, mate. Big shout out to Shay, Brian, Emily, Harry, online tonight. Give us a shout out in the chat from where you're dialing in from, gang. There's about 35 plus people online right now, so give us a shout out just to let us know you're still here. But mate, you bring up such an interesting point, because I talked about this in the GFC, right? So the governments, and you alluded to this when you talked about too big to fail, right? Businesses and companies that are so rotten and toxic, but they've infested an economy so crazily, so endemically that the governments, the governments think they can't let them fail because something else will happen. And if you think about money as an ecosystem, like our whole world is an ecosystem. When the rotten doesn't die, it zombifies, and then real life, the green life, the renewal life doesn't come through. This is a law of nature, all right? And what's happening in our economic system is it's not allowing the law of nature to clean out, get rid of the dead, rotten, useless companies, and the new growth come through. And there you go. Mate, I love it.
That's a bit intense. That's a bit intense, Jason. They just might have been nice companies that just weren't meant to be.
No. But let's go there.
You can take the hard side.
Let's watch David Attenborough. Let's watch a nature show. Like, I mean, there ain't no second chances in nature. The lion's gonna fucking eat you, right? But here's what's happened. The sick, the unhealthy, the ones that shouldn't be surviving, the survival of the fittest. This is reality. Are being augmented, right? So what's happening is the lion's teeth are being removed, or the lions are being locked out of the savannah. So the dead, the sick, the unhealthy are now staying alive for longer than they should have, and affecting everything else in the knock-on effect of the infrastructure. It's crazy.
You heard it here first. The saying coined, the Z Nation economy.
The Z Nation economy. There you go. Well, we've got Alison from Adelaide. We've got Sharon in from Anglesea down your way.
Yep.
Henry, Central Queensland. Henry, you got some rain. Mate, that's good to see. Henry's out there. I love this one. Harry, the Free Victoria. Go, Harry. Tony's in from Christchurch. Great. The land of the long white cloud. Good on you, Tony. Heidi coming from SA. And Graham from Giddy Up. Wherever Giddy Up is, Graham, I'm glad you're giddying up. And Brian, great to have you again, mate, from the Singapore Sling. I hope you're having one of those cocktails this afternoon, Brian. The old Singapore Sling's a good drink, that's for sure. So great to hear everyone, wherever you're from. But yeah, the Z Nation, right? The zombification. So it's an interesting one, Andy. We got Southeast Queensland, Dustin here. Good to see.
So, mate, just jumping in back into the politics a little bit, because it's not totally dead, but
because you love a bit of politics.
Yeah, don't mind throwing my hat in the ring. So this is me in the future. That's pretty much what I'm going to look like. But so if we have a think about what's coming in with Biden, assuming that I'll just get rid of Biden here, but assuming that he's able to to get through the courts and all of that, and it's mostly likely. I think it's a fait accompli. And I've got some conspiracy theories as to what's really going on over there, but I won't share them tonight. We'll save them for next week.
Yep.
But green. So when we get to this, so they know this data. This is the only place in the world that you can look to find out low interest rates, prolonged period of time in a developed economy that has still punched on, right? And still had some very, very successful companies, had some massive, massive wins. Industrial production didn't stop, right? So that's what they're thinking. But so here's what needs to happen. And here's what's going to happen in the US. Now, they're going to have a Republican. It's going to be a hung parliament. Julie Fletcher always loves that term, a hung parliament.
If you're there, Jules, give us a shout out.
But there's a good chance that the Republicans and the Democrats will actually play ball together on the greater good for the US economy. So green is the name of the game in the future. And I think I said that to you earlier.
What do you mean green? Tell me what you mean green. Investing in green?
Investing in green. So Europe is already committed to green, and there's mass amounts of policy over there. Renewable energy, responsible investing is really Europe is leading the way. Europe and the UK.
Well, here's one I prepared earlier for this exact conversation you're having, Andy, right now.
We are in sync at the moment, aren't we?
Ladies and gentlemen, we don't chat before this conversation. Sharing a brain together. Look, check this out, right? Aldi saying, right, we're going to be 100% renewable. One of my favorite companies, Apple, they are carbon positive. It's their goal to be carbon positive for their whole entire operations across the world. Carbon positive, not carbon neutral, carbon positive, right? And then where's the other one here? I've got, which was,
South Australia.
South Australia going for it.
No, this is Victoria.
But this is interesting. So Victoria is actually going to end up with the biggest battery in Australia. And there was one other thing that I grabbed.
And it's by our friend Elon. Elon.
Elon. We love him. But check this out. Woolworths joins Bunnings, Officeworks, and Aldi, making a commitment to go 100% renewable by 2025. Fucking boom.
So these guys are getting ahead of the game because so Biden is going to put a lot of pressure.
It will be. Yeah, it's needed, right? It's needed, Andy. You know,
get in there before the politicians start to mandate it and start to take out the incentives, because when they'll create. Anyway, let me not get too political. That wasn't the point. The point was that it's likely that we're going to get the green push again. And so with that, hopefully Australia embraces it. We're not good at it. And Trump was really a big get out of jail free card for Australia, because the rest of the world is really going, and it's themed now, it's called decarbonisation, right, in investment markets. So I think we're going to see a big push for Biden to sort of say, listen, what have you been doing here in Australia once he's inaugurated? So I'm hoping that the government are already starting to think green. So if we go, okay, we know what happens as a case study in Japan with low interest rates. Industrial production will continue, but it will be volatile, and the range might start to decrease a little bit for a period of time. Stimulus doesn't work, and low interest rates don't create growth, right? Long term, they flatten the yield because you end up with zombie companies and you end up with a Z Nation economy that we first coined here, right? Patent that, Jason. Z Nation economy.
Z Nation. Shay's listening in, so Shay, sort that, would you?
So if we know these two things, then what rationally is the next direction?
Yeah.
It's big push infrastructure that I've been banging on about now for a while, because it's the only way that the government can inject funds to create long-term jobs. So
you're talking green infrastructure. Yeah. Green infrastructure.
I'm sure that we would have gone in a different direction if the election went in a different direction, but I think that now we'll be forced to go in that direction. And I personally think it's a great direction. I think it's
I think it's fucking amazing. And do you think, like, well, I mean, I think COVID's had an absolute. I think COVID has been a gift in this direction. Like, let's face it. Like, humanity was on a fucking pretty average track. I mean, those people who don't believe in global warming and stuff, I think they need their fucking heads read, right? At the end of the day, like we as humans have been destroying the planet for way too long, and we're fucking it up. Let's get our shit together. Maybe you and me aren't going to see it, Andy, but our kids are going to have to deal with the fucking shit that we haven't done, right? So, I met with a guy today. I had a podcast interview today with a guy called John Wood, and I had a podcast interview with Andy Fenton yesterday, gang. Keep an eye out for that one. It's coming out. It's going to be super cool. And John Wood, amazing guy, Room to Read, created a charity, Room to Read, changing the world, like at a significant level, like at high level, right? Hundreds of thousands of, libraries and schools built in developing nations, millions of children going to school because of this charity, not, big thinkers, bigger inspirational people. And, it's like, well, we needed to rethink our shit, like this was an opportunity to rethink our shit. And he's actually just started this movement called Profit with Purpose, and fuck, I'm sold. Like I'm so pumped. I think I bought right into it on the podcast. I loved it. He's such an inspirational guy. He changed my life 7-8 years ago when I read his book, and today again he's changed my life in a new direction as well. Like mate, the world's not going to be saved by governments. It's fucking not. It's going to be saved by you and me. It's going to be saved by the regular person who's going to say, well, those fucking government, those guys, all they're fucking interested in is getting re-elected. What a bunch of muppets, right? What am I going to do? One by one, like you said, get involved at your local level in this stuff. Like the world deserves it, and we deserve it too. So anyway, I don't know. I was fucking just getting a bit pumped about that, Andy.
No, mate, I 100% agree. You can bitch and moan, but if you don't do anything to change your circumstance, then all you are is a bitch and moaner.
Yeah.
And it's and so here's the thing is that
here's a good
economies change and social things change when there's enough pain that forces people to take the actions that they never took before.
Yeah.
And you've heard me say it for a while, is that the next stage of economic growth will come more from a social shift than anything else.
Yeah.
Is when the world starts to shift and understand its responsibilities to a greater level. And that's going to be the next boom, right? Yeah. When that happens en masse, and it may be, I hope it's in my lifetime, because I'll be all in, because you'll feel it. There'll be an inertia. So what was that we brought up?
No, mate. No, a good question. What's a good green company to invest in? Like, I'm a big fan of Tesla, but I'm not an advisor about a company. But gang, do your research. There are people, pushing this stuff forward, but also to, let's be practical. There are companies that are profitable companies that are going to embrace green into the future, and I actually think that's going to be a profitable edge, Andy. You know what I mean? Like those companies who are, the Woolies and the Aldis and, those companies which may not have been so great in the past, and now they're being, by default being forced, by popular demand to be better than they have been. Why not? Why not take advantage of that? It's a great way of rewarding yourself and them for them saving the planet one bit at a time. So, good question, Paul. It's a great one, and we might come back with some things. Andy and I have actually set up a few accounts, and we're going to invest live ourselves.
Let us know by jumping into the chat if because one of my friends is actually the portfolio manager for a major responsible investing firm over in the UK. So. And he's a funny bloke. He's an absolute legend. He might be watching right now.
Let's get him on the podcast. Let's get him on the podcast.
If we get a few hell yeahs in here, yes, we want to see him. We want to talk green energy. I want to know that you'll do it, because I don't want to waste his time and get him on if nobody's interested. But drop a bit into the chat, give us a thumbs up and stuff like that. And I might see whether we can get Freeman on here. As I said, he's a legend. Spent a long time over in the UK, but he knows this stuff a million times better than what I do, and he's in the part of the world that is really leading the charge in this. So drop a yes or a yes please in the chatter if you want to see it, and if there's enough of you who do it, then I'll get him on. And he's a funny
green
chap.
Energy legend. And this is the gang. This is the thing, gang. the 6 degrees of separation, I love this one. Within two to 3 degrees of separation right now, Andy, we could have people on, Wealth, Wine and Wisdom that have got such amazing influence. John Wood, really good mate of mine, in the room to read. He knows, so many people around the world in this idea of, profit for purpose. You've got connections, give us a bit of encouragement, gang, to get some great people on Wealth, Wine and Wisdom. And, we want to make it fun. And Harry's doing a shit. Yeah. So Emily's in, Alison's in, Shay's in, Michelle's in. It's good to see. So, which is
Freeman, if
good.
you're watching, you may well be on here soon, mate. And I don't care what time it is in the UK.
I love this one from Dustin. Green is a great corporate responsibility along with the free market. Can and will achieve the goal of the green. Government is laughable as a vehicle for this goal, which is one of the great mistakes, is judge policies and programs by the intentions rather than the results. I love that. What a great quote,
And here's the thing, though, you've got to be careful when it comes to green energy investing or green investing, because it's just terrible. Government, and I don't want to government bash too much, but governments create incentives, and Jason and I spoke about this. The first time I thought about it since it happened, when we ran this podcast and we dove a little bit into my history. But the government have got an incredible history of deploying incentives into areas that are popular for an election, and providing incentives and tax reliefs, and then just turning their back on it. And what quite often happens is, when they turn their back onto it, corporate greed comes in, monopolizes it, arbitrages it all out, and the incentive dies, and it dies a miserable death. And so when you're looking at green, it's more around the responsible companies rather than the green ones. Because if you get into companies that rely on large amounts of government stimulus, then you can be exposed to political risk. And I would argue, from an investment perspective, that political risk is one of the most significant. It never used to play in investment markets, but I believe, and it's not a popular belief, but I believe that political risk is one of the biggest risks to various different types of investments, and it actually has been for quite some time.
Well,
so when you look green, look at theme, not necessarily just green, if that makes sense.
Dead right. And Andy, this is part of why I love sort of chatting with you. You gave some amazing wisdom to our clients at Positive about the world of, super, and, the idea that governments have changed, legislation around super. Like, I can't remember the amount of times, but it blew me away.
9 times in 20 years.
How many times?
9 times in 20 years.
Yeah, in a 20-year period, that's once every 2 years, right? Once every 2 and a bit years. So, you're trying to plan your retirement using super as a vehicle because you think that's smart and that's what you're encouraged to do. And the government changed the legislation 9 times in 20 years. That's ludicrous. Change the rules 9 times. Imagine going, all right, you know what? We're going to make this game, and here's the rules, and then it just gets changed all the time. That's insane. So you're dead right. The environment, the vehicles, the investments, if a government could get in there and meddle with it, then, it is a risk. And it's one that's, like you said, I think you said it before, that, a public servant whose retirement is protected, they protect their own fucking retirement, and then they make decisions on people who don't have the protection mechanisms that person's had living in a public servant world for their life, people who fucking have it. It's fucking ludicrous.
Imagine a world, Jace. Imagine a world where public servants around the world, their longevity, their wealth, their future success was based on the legacy that they left after they finished their term.
Imagine. Yeah, that might be kind of like, I don't know, an entrepreneur who starts a company, and if the fucking company goes bankrupt, he's not paid. If a fucking government who's been elected for 4 years fucks it up, they get paid for the rest of their life. What a joke. Anyway, we've ended up. I think we might have had too much wine, Andy. There's not enough wisdom.
No,
in here.
I just think that politics is playing very much into things these days, and
you got to be aware of it, right? Yeah.
And it'd be nice when they start to take their hands off it and start to leave things alone. But they have to intervene right now. They absolutely have to. So I'm not saying they don't.
Mate, you and I have said this. I mean, shit. They actually did. They actually did a good job in Australia anyway. I think that
I just hope that Dan Andrews doesn't get his old mates to do the quarantine when they start letting international travellers back into Victoria. That could end in a slightly messy way.
Well, I think we'll leave Dan off the table anyway. I think the national government did an all right job. I don't know about the states, but anyway. Yeah. So no, we are a bit feisty today, Michelle. I don't know. It's been one of those weeks, and a couple of wines at the end of the week sort of letting it go, but.
Well, it's been a big week, and I think it'll take I think it'll take a little bit of decompression. So, just to give you an idea of what's actually happening behind the scenes, is that we've gone around about 5 or 6% up. We've been 10% down, and that's just in the last week and a half.
Yeah.
We've had in between it is a few banking announcements, which, by the way, Jace, spot on the money with our results from the bank side of the equation. And it's in this sort of unprecedented time. We're coming towards Christmas. It's going to be a very, very interesting Christmas. My bet is that everyone gets drunk, potentially even those who don't drink. Might just be getting drunk on freedom, but we're in for one hell of a ride into next year, and you have to keep your eye on politics.
Yeah,
you really do. You have to keep your eye on politics, because ultimately that is going to dictate where the future is going to be. These job makers, these job seekers, job keepers. If we don't keep our eye out, and for all of those business owners, we'll do some more wraps in and around this. As we get into the new year, I've got a hell of a lot on the agenda for tax planning for everybody out there. It's pretty exciting, actually.
Yeah.
But it's never. I don't know about you, mate. I've never had a point in time where politics has played so much into my day-to-day life. It's just out of control. So I don't mean to be political, but from time to time, allegedly, we might be. Well, I tell you about this wine, Jace. It's the plums coming through like no tomorrow.
Sadlier's Creek wine from the Hunter Valley. Gang, give it thumbs up. Double thumbs up from me. Absolutely fantastic. And
the
Andy's
bluegrass
given it a good rep. And that one looked really good. That one looked absolutely amazing in the box. So if anyone's out there, this week's episode is sponsored by Sadlier's Creek Wines. And thank you very much to those guys. But maybe, there's a couple of things before we sort of maybe finish up the episode this week, Andy. A couple of things that I just wanted to maybe share that I think is really poignant. And this one, I'll ask you about this one. What do you think about this? All right. So tell me right now, the bank, this is the eighth time this year, the bank has sliced its rates for deposits. All right. So, eighth time, right? So, you'd think, all right, well, hang on. You'd reckon in the last quarter, there's been a record dollar amount of money going to deposit accounts in banks in the last 3 months. And so it was some major amount. Anyway, so big inflow of cash into bank accounts in the last 3 months. And what did the banks do? When you gave the banks your money, what did they do to you? They stopped paying you interest rates, right? Okay, because they actually can't afford. They can't afford to do it because they don't want outflow of payments going out because they want to protect their share prices, and their dividends and all those sorts of things. So, gang, yeah, it's. You know
what they say in The Simpsons, don't you?
Tell me.
You don't make friends with salad. You don't make friends with salad. You don't make friends with... So they don't make money from deposits. And they don't need to, because they know that everyone's going to put their money in there regardless because of instability, because of offset accounts. Where they make their money is in the margin on the loans. So this is a classic sign of them saying, okay, we're just going to take that off the table. So here's a suggestion for you, the big four banks. If you're going to take the interest rate off the table, take the fees off the table too.
Take the fees off, yeah. So it's interesting. It's interesting, Andy. Michelle's a bit cranky about that, and I would be too, Michelle. Like, gang, cash has been completely devalued. Andy and I have talked about this. It's being devalued for 20 years, 30 years, right? In an institution, it's going that way, And while on the flip side, like Andy has said once or twice before, defensive assets are being redefined, what that actually looks like in the world of investing. Defensive is, a whole new ball game. Money and cash, sitting around in a bank is like, I think in many places around the world, Andy, that idea of cash in a bank as a defensive asset, like it's done and dusted, right? Like, what I'd love, Andy, maybe next week if you just did a little bit of a survey for us on, how many countries around the world are in the, 2 or 1 or 0% interest rates of cash in the bank, Harry reckons you're dreaming with bank with no fees. Tell him he's dreaming.
You know what? I'm not. I promise you I'm not. It is coming. 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 And the reason why it's coming is because of the competition. Apple is going to come. Apple will advertise, and that's your bank account fee.
Well, they've got their banking license.
And so here's the thing: is that the big four. So since Costello got into government and he launched the 4 Pillars policy, that's not to say 4 Pillars Brewery, just for the difference, the 4 Pillars policy, which was to maintain the stability of the payment system of Australia. So that payment system being the ability for money to transact around Australia. Because once upon a time, if that payment system failed, right, we were done. And that's when there was runs on bank cash and we couldn't print enough dollars to have it in circulation because everyone was taking their money out of the bank.
Yeah.
But you got PayPal now. You've got, I can't even tell you how many transactions I haven't used a bank mechanism this year to actually go through because PayPal's easier or Stripe's easier, or eventually the deposits are going into the banks, right? But the transactions are now largely out of the banks. Why do you think Afterpay's gone through the roof? ZipPay's gone through the roof. These are some of the stocks that have gone up 3, 4, 5, 600% since COVID started. So this is a trend in a different direction. And these are companies that are thinking, not just maintaining their position. So it happened in the UK, and basically they pay you basically to open up bank accounts, right? And fees? Oh, no way, Jose.
It'd be
here's the thing. It's the money that sits in the bank is actually traded between banks in the overnight exchange. They make money on giving liquidity to other banks. So they actually use your deposits and make money on your deposits. So they're doing that anyway. They're just double dipping, right? Yeah. The fees are going to get put, and everything in financial services is going to get put on margin pressure.
Well, the banks have been given short-term funding from governments and the central banks, the reserve banks, like the cheapest money they've ever borrowed in their entire lives. Like, the bank's not giving people a 2% loan at a loss, Andy, right? They're giving people a 2% loan at a profit because they borrowed it from the central bank at maybe a 0.1%. So gang, they're still making their margin. They're still making some money.
Well, I've actually got, and I thought this is more in your game, but I just downloaded it for the sake of it. I saw it, and did I download it? No, I don't think I did. Oh, blast. But it was Michelle 23 banks.
This is an interesting one, Andy. Like Facebook won't let Michelle swear.
Well, we can.
We can. We'll do it for you, Michelle.
So, in doing some research today, 20 was it 31 or was it 20? I always mix the numbers up. But anyway, let's just say 31, and I could be wrong. Banks with interest rates under 2%. But when I was looking at
31, there's 113 lenders in Australia. It's 31. Yep.
31 with interest rates under 2%, just a fraction under. But most of the P&I standard variable is sitting at sort of on home loans, not investment loans, is sitting, and God, I've got so much to talk about that, but is sitting at around about 2.1 to 2.5. So at 2.1, they're picking up 2%. They're picking up a clean 2%.
Clean margin. And arguably the lowest risk borrowed money they've ever borrowed in the bank's history. They're not going to
guaranteed.
Yep, they're not coming out of this, like without a profit. I mean, these guys are smart. Don't you worry about that. They haven't wasted a good what's Winston's thing? They haven't wasted a good crisis.
Never waste a good crisis. Absolutely.
And so and this is the interesting thing with banks. And Harry asked a good question. So will the bank prices drop? I think we did it last week, Andy. I think you did it actually. The banks produced a profit. They actually said, we made money. Don't worry about COVID. We're good. At the end of the day, there we go. There it is. You did it. I'm going to do this full screen. Hang on 2 seconds. I'm going to show you this one. Check that out. All right, there you go.
So operational income decreased by 1.7%.
Yeah.
Net interest income increased. So that's it. Net interest income increased by 0.9%. Right. Cash profit after tax decreased by 36%. So they have been hit on their cash profit, but they're also deploying money into different areas.
Yes.
So, and this is what I called before this came out as well, is that I called it that even with everything that's happened, I don't actually think the banks are doing too bad, even with all of the mortgage pause. And we even had the mortgage pause on there, but I'm not going to be able to find it this quickly, I don't think. Here we go. This was this was the mortgage deferrals per bank per month over the quarter from June through to September. The purple being commercial, and the blue being residential or investment to personal investors. So quite an incredible little statistic there that the banks have done very, very well in a period of time where they should have been absolutely obliterated with all of these mortgage deferrals.
Yeah. In my head, this is not advice, but I'm going to give it a nudge with the banks. I think they're going to come out on top next year and the year after and the year after that. I believe there's going to be a lending boom. There's going to be an absolute lending boom, and they're set themselves up to gain back whatever they've lost in COVID times tenfold in this next lending boom. And here's a shout out for everyone listening in today. It has never, ever, ever been easier to eliminate owner-occupier or consumer debt in my history, in my existence. And I don't know about you, Andy. We could probably bring up that chart from 200 years. It has never been cheaper to borrow money and pay it off faster than ever in history. Just imagine this, literally I showed some slides a few weeks ago, and I could pull them up again next week or whatever. 10 years ago, people were paying $5,000 and $6,000 a month on the same incomes, because incomes haven't grown over a decade. It's been pretty flat. We've had low growth. But what's happened is interest rates have dropped. So people who were paying $5,000 10 years ago for the same mortgage are now paying $1,900, right? So here's what I say to people. Keep paying $5,000, smash your mortgage off in 8 years, not 30 years. You can afford to do it. Don't fucking waste your money, piss it up the wall. But this is where strategy and advice comes in, Andy. This is where getting coaching and stuff, making sure you got your right structures in place to take advantage of these times. Don't whinge about it. It's never been cheaper to borrow money. And I'm actually going to find this article from Robert Kiyosaki, and we might sort of leave this as an open loop hanger for next week. All right. Robert Kiyosaki said, check this out. Sharon Baldwin said, our first home loan was 17%. My Lord, imagine having a 17% home loan for 30 years. Imagine that.
That was on the way down.
That was on the way down. My first home loan was 11%. So Sharon knocked me off the perch there, crazy times, right? But I was listening to Robert Kiyosaki, and, I love Robert Kiyosaki. He was one of my first ever, book mentors. I read his book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, and it set me on this journey. But he said, those who are afraid of debt are insane, because debt debt is the only tax-free money you'll ever have. And if you're told to go to school, get a job, pay taxes, buy a house, pay it off, and then invest in the share market, as in the blind leading the blind, it's a rigged game. The whole game is rigged. The share market's rigged. The university game is rigged. The job game is rigged. The tax game is rigged. Everything's rigged, right? And you think being debt-free is freedom? No. Borrow as much cheap debt as possible because it's the only tax-free money the whole system will give you. And it was a really interesting conversation, and it blew my noodle a bit, but I'm like, yeah, I get that. Debt that pays for itself. Assets, if you borrow at 2%, and like I can buy you right now a good property, and I'm sure you could buy a good share, Andy, at a 5% dividend yield somewhere, right? And I don't know what sort of leverage we're talking about in shares, but I'll just talk property and whatever. I can buy you a good property right now that'll give you a 5 to 6% rental yield. You can borrow at let's say, a 3% interest rate on investment rate, and it's actually sub 3% in many cases right now. So you're getting a net 2% yourself in your pocket. Plus, you're getting tax deductions. You can have a positive cash flow property and you still get tax deductions, because it's blown away. So it's never been easier to smash your debts and create financial freedom, right? They're like, people are like, well, whatever. It's never been, well, never's a long time, but it hasn't been easier in my 20 years of paying attention. I'm so pumped about it.
2,000 years, wasn't it? I think that was the last number. It was just before JC was born. I think it was the last JC, time that interest rates were zero or negative.
Yeah. So, mate, well, Andy, I've enjoyed the conversation, and I've enjoyed the wine incredibly as well. Sadley's Crossing gang, a big shout out to those crew at Sadley's Crossing. Thanks for supporting the podcast or the wine. But hey, hang on. Here's something that I want to let everyone know, ladies and gentlemen. If you do miss Wealth, Wine, and Wisdom these days, then you can have a look at this. You can pick it up on. As now we've created as a podcast. You can subscribe to Wealth, Wine and Wisdom on Google Play. You can subscribe to it on Spotify. You can subscribe to it on iTunes. So if you do miss it, you can come in and watch it live on or the live replay, or you can download it in the car and have a listen, which is super cool. So Andy and we've launched a new podcast, which is awesome. I
love that. Before JC played fullback for Jerusalem, that was that's hilarious.
Nice, Brian. Nice, mate.
Jump on board, support us through the journey. It means you can get drunk at any point in time during the day. You can have a wine with us at 5 a.m. in the morning if you want.
Irrelevant of where you are.
It doesn't matter where you are.
So Wealth, Wine and Wisdom is in all good podcast distribution centers. So grab it, gang, subscribe, download it. Love your support. Give us a bit of a shout out. And we love supporting our community, our property investing community, our business investing community, our share investing community. And so, gang, love you guys dialing in and supporting us on a Friday. We enjoy having a chat and a wine anyway, but it's so much better when you guys join us and give us some support. We love it. So thank you very much. Really enjoyed today's catch up with you. My man, Andy Fenton, always a pleasure. I've got an empty cup.
And Tracy, Wendy Loretti and the team. I've had too much too. Wendy Loretti and the team at Sadler's. Like this is absolute gem. It's an absolute gem. I love it. And
absolute gem.
I won't be sharing it with anybody. I think I might just stay in the office for the rest of the night and bring some cheese and crackers in and get stuck into it. Genuinely is. So if you're out in the Hunter Valley, go and say hi to Wendy for us. And I'm going to go through there, I reckon, on the way up to see you at Christmas time, mate, because I hear that the Queensland border will be open to Mexicans by Christmas. So I look forward to sharing a couple in person. And maybe even coming to the gang live from top of the hill down near the ranch or something like that.
Yeah. Well, we're planning on doing maybe 1 or 2 of the Wealth, Wine and Wisdoms live from the farm. So, gang, keep an eye out for that one. That'll be fun. So, Andy, thanks, mate. And thanks, everybody, for dialing in to another episode of Wealth, Wine and Wisdom. The only thing we've got left to do is sign off, sayonara. But we've got one little video to play, but fantastic. Like I said, gang, thanks for supporting us. Thanks to our sponsors this week, Sadler's Creek Wines.
Sadler's Creek.
Yep, and have a great, awesome, amazing weekend, everyone. And catch you again next week. Take care, and we'll chat then.